What causes someone to have anxiety to begin with? That's what we're going to discuss in this video. My name is Dr. Terranella. We're going to discuss this as well as some things you can do about your anxiety, help you unravel some of those ongoing thoughts. If you're interested in this, keep watching. We're going to get into the details. We're all about helping you gain a deeper understanding of your health and what's going on with your body. Hopefully this video gets you a little bit closer towards that aim. Also wanted to point out that sometimes when I'm producing this content, I get a statistic wrong or the name of something wrong, and almost always there's a corresponding blog article on our website, SW Integrated Medicine /blog. You can find it there. Those oftentimes go into a little bit more detail than the videos do as well. So please check that out if you're interested. And it does take considerable effort to produce this content. So if you're liking the information, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you do have questions about any of the content, please ask it in the comment section here or on the blog. That's why I'm producing the information for you to gain that deeper understanding. So ask the questions if you have them. Hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for watching. Let's get into it. So what causes a person to develop anxiety? Anxiety and anxiety disorders develop for a complex set of reasons. It's an interplay of or intermingling of things like life events, personality, sometimes medical conditions, brain chemistry, and even genetics can play a role in why someone might develop anxiety or an anxiety disorder. So you say, okay, that makes sense, but let's unpack this a little bit more so you can better understand what you can actually do about it. So we use the term all the time, but what is anxiety? Is it worry about the future in general or worry about a specific event? I would say probably not. That's probably not the best way to describe it because we all have those, worries from time to time. Now, I think a better way to define it would be an ongoing fixation about future events or potential negative things that might happen to you or your loved ones. So it's that ongoing nature of the worry or anxiety that sort of defines somebody as having an anxiety disorder. Periodic, intermittent, concern about something that might be coming up is not an anxiety disorder, but it's the ongoing nature of it, and to a certain degree, the degree at which it interferes with your life circumstances. But I think the duration part, makes sense to most people because it is sort of a continuous pattern of fixation, rumination about potential negative things that might happen to you, whereas the rest of us, may have periodic, anxious states on any given month or week, but it's not every single day. It's not, all the time. So that makes sense. But there are different ways that this ongoing fixation or rumination comes about, and these are different ways to categorize your anxiety disorder. So there's panic disorder, which is more a matter of amplitude of the anxiety. It can come in short bursts, and then usually there's ongoing anxiety along with the panic. And then there's post-traumatic stress disorder, there's generalized anxiety disorder, there's social anxiety, there's phobias, there's OCD. So all these are different ways that your anxious traits or your fixation about the future may manifest. So in almost all cases of anxiety disorders, there's a predisposition or some sort of genetic or medical predisposition coupled with a triggering event or experience. And it's this predisposition that sort of causes a person to frame that event that happened, that experience that happened in a negative way and to ruminate on it. This rumination, supposedly is going to help them solve for, not having this in the future or figure out a way to minimize the impact. But in the process of ruminating about it, it sort of amplifies the effect over time, amplifies the negative experience. As you remember and run through that in your mind over and over again, it sort of deepens the neural network in your brain that recalls this, and it deepens and colors that experience so that it's easier to remember in the future. That deepened neural network allows you to the positive side is it will allow you to recall that event and avoid similar types of situations in the future. That's the positive part, but there's a negative side as well. For instance, if you're worrying about avoiding negative things and you're constantly trying to avoid those negative things, you will tend to interpret your day-to-day experience in a negative light, even when those things aren't necessarily that negative. So let me give you an example of how this, is obviously played out. So picture yourself walking in a somewhat dark, dimly lit street, and you're sort of already disposed to, feeling bad. You're frustrated with something or worried about something already, and then you see a faint shadow in your peripheral vision. If you're already sort of disposed or predisposed to thinking negatively, you're going to interpret that shadow as if it's an assailant or something negative towards yourself. On the other hand, if you're in a good mood and, sort of enjoying life and, potentially going to be doing something positive, you may interpret that as something less ominous. Maybe it's a friend or something less ominous. And this is the idea that, the memories through which we observe things can change how we experience them. So like if you're looking at a book, for instance, and, you see that book, you know what a book is, and that tells you what that object is. And if you have a positive experience with that book, you're able to associate that as that visual stimulus is coming through your brain. And if it's a negative thing, you're going to observe it in a negative way. And the same thing can happen, for things that we haven't quite figured out what they are yet. So memories, the way that we see things is sort of through our own memories, and it's coupled on top of the new experience. So in quantum physics, we see this manifest as the observer having an effect on what's observed. So when you get down to subatomic particles, the observer actually has an effect on what the experiment plays out. So the experimenter actually changes the outcome of the experience, of the experiment. This is why mindfulness as a practice actually helps people with anxiety, because you're breaking up that cyclical thinking pattern. So what is mindfulness? Well, for someone with anxiety disorder, it would be helpful. The idea with mindfulness is that you're moment to moment being aware of what's on your mind, what you're thinking about. And so for someone with anxiety disorder, it's helpful for them to start to recognize how often they're fixating on these future events. It's not to say that you need to stop that altogether. It's really the goal in mind should not be to eliminate that, but more so to recognize what is actually occurring from moment to moment. And through that recognition, you're able to see where you're at and get a different idea on what the future can look like, because you're interrupting just by that observation of what's going on. You're interrupting that continuous loop to the next thought. Mindfulness allows you to have those types of insights and the ability to see how often, how much of your daily bandwidth is spent on ruminating or thinking about potential negative things that might happen to you. So you want to start with where you're at, and when you start to recognize that, you may think to yourself, wow, I spend most of my day thinking about other things other than what's in front of me right now. And that's actually okay. That's the first step in breaking down some of the habitual thinking patterns, those negative thoughts. And so you want to accept that and continue with that process of continuing to observe where your mind is at. And from there, you can see and understand what the path forward might be. All right, so that's all I had for you. Hopefully that gives you some deeper understanding of what causes a person to have anxiety to begin with, and maybe even some things you can do about it, some ways to move through those ongoing thoughts. If you like this type of information, click on the like button and subscribe to the channel. I will be posting some similar types of videos on anxiety here shortly. So if you like that information, subscribe to the channel and you'll get notified.